Hi, I'm Carol and I'm from Designer Stencils. In this video, I'm going to be giving you an introduction on how to use our stencils on everything from a fondant covered cake, and yes, you can use it on buttercream too, and cookies. After this video, you'll be ready to go onto our website, designerstencils.com, and we have an extensive array of additional ways to use our stencils on everything from chocolate and yes, even pie crusts. Royal icing is a really good medium for using on your fondant covered cakes as well as cookies. It's going to give you that raised look, but we need to mix it correctly, and I want to show you how to do that. What I like to use is a pound bag of pre-mixed royal icing, and I have that here in my bowl. And to that, I need to add exactly 6 tablespoons of water. So here's my water. My tablespoon measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to get my electric mixer. We're going to mix it on a low speed just to get everything, all the dry ingredients mixed together. And now we're going to switch to a high speed and mix this on high for a good 5, maybe 10 minutes. Okay, see how it has turned white, and now I'm getting a nice soft peak when I pull up my beater. This is perfect consistency. After I finish mixing, what I like to do is to take my trowel and just test it on some parchment paper to make sure that it's the right consistency. So I'm going to lay my stencil down here, get a little bit of icing on my trowel. See, it's just ready to drop off, but it's not going to. I'm going to spread across the stencil. Now carefully lift up the edge of the stencil. And there you go, a perfect job. I recommend that you practice on parchment paper until you get the technique down right, and then you can go right to the side of your cake. I've added some color to my royal icing, and now I'm going to show you how to do the top of a cake. Take your stencil, line it up on the surface of your fondant covered cake. Now I'm going to take my royal icing, put a big dollop right in the middle. That's going to help hold the stencil in place so it doesn't shift around. Now I'm going to take my trowel and then gently distribute it. See how I'm pulling along the stencil? I'm not lifting my trowel up. That's going to pull the stencil away from the surface of the cake and mess up your job. Now that I have it evenly distributed, I'm just going to spread it out. Now on the top of the cake, you can leave a little more of this icing on there if you want to have nice rounded edges, almost like puffy paint. But for the sides of the cakes, we're going to want to scrape all the way down to the surface of the stencil. Now I'm going to carefully pull away stencil, and there you go. Now I'm going to show you how to stencil on the side of a cake. This is probably the hardest thing you're going to have to learn how to do, but I suggest you take a styrofoam form and practice, or invert one of your baking pans and just practice on the side of that. It's nice if you have an extra pair of hands to help hold the stencil flush so that the icing doesn't run underneath the openings. Another idea is to take dressmaker pins and stick them through your cake here on the ends of the stencil. Now, we do have another video online for our cake wrap kit, and I'm just going to show you quickly. It's using a latex-free, springy kind of a medical tape, and we wrap it around like this around the back side of your cake and clip it to both ends. See how it holds it right in place for us, and it's not going to mar your fondant on the back. The only problem is once you pull your stencil off, you are going to have to wait for your icing to dry before you can repeat this process on the back side of the cake. Now I'm going to take my icing, I'm going to spread evenly right across the surface of the stencil. And go with the openings. If you have little areas that might spring up in the stencil, you can always take some tape and tape that section down if it gives you trouble. Now I'm going to gently release my clip. And pull off my stencil. Now sometimes you might have a little area with a smudge where the icing might have run together. So before the icing dries, I like to use a little clay tool, or you can even use just a toothpick, and come in here and just gently clean it away. And there you go. Now you can also do these techniques on a buttercream cake. The only difference is that you're going to be using a nice creamy consistency of buttercream to spread across the stencil. And you also have to make sure, now this is imperative, that the surface icing of your buttercream cake has crusted over. Use an icing recipe so that it does get hard. We do have one on our website, or just pop it in the freezer or the refrigerator for about 15 minutes and make sure it gets a nice crust on it. And just be very gentle when you're spreading that buttercream on there. You do want to use an extra pair of hands because I really think the cake wrap might make an indentation on the back of your cake. I love to bake cookies, but I don't always have enough time to ice them and then go and put some royal icing or coloring on top of there. So I'm going to show you a fast and easy way to get a pattern on your sugar cookies. You can even do this with your pie crusts. Now I'm going to take my sugar cookie dough, I'm going to roll it out. Now I'm going to take my cookie cutter and cut my shape. Now I'm going to transfer this to my baking sheet, lined with parchment. And then I want to take my stencil and line it right over the top and gently press it down. Now I'm going to take some cinnamon sugar, sprinkle just enough on the top. And then you can use your finger or a pastry brush. Just to distribute across the stencil. Now we need to be careful when we pull up the stencil that we don't shake so that all those extra little pieces of the sugar don't fall down through the stencil openings and wreck what we've done. And there we go. What we're going to do now is we're going to bake it. And the cinnamon sugar bakes deep down in there into a golden brown, just like this. Now, if you want to get color on your cookie quick and easily, roll out your cookie dough, cut your shape, transfer it to your parchment lined cookie sheet. Now I'm going to put my stencil right over the cookie. Now I'm going to brush on color. I like to use crystal colors, powdered food colors, and you just use a very little bit. Like dab it off in there to get the excess powder off. You can always come back and get more. And then just gently, using a stencil brush, brush it on. Any extra powder that's on the edge of the stencil, see how I'm just moving it in and distributing it. Now gently lift the stencil. And there's your color. All you have to do is bake to seal it in. Now I'm going to show you how to make an elegant raised look cookie such as this. I'm taking a cookie, sugar cookie actually, covered in royal icing, is now hardened. I take my stencil, line it up over the top, and now I'm going to take my royal icing with my trowel. Now, if you don't have a trowel, those hotel room keys or the fake credit cards that come in the mail, they work really well. Now, this is the tricky part, to try and hold the stencil in place while you get the icing started. So just gently pull across the stencil. See how I'm holding the trowel this way and not this way? I'm less apt to pull on some of the really intricate cuttings that way. I'm just gently pressing the icing through the openings. Take off the excess. And now I'm going to carefully pull up my stencil. It's just that easy. Now, if you have to go and do more cookies, I highly recommend that you wash the stencil in between each one. Sometimes you can get 2 or 3 renditions out of it before you have to wash, or that the icing gets in the back and starts seeping through. But definitely you have to wash this more frequently to get that raised look. Here I'm going to show you how to take plain royal icing covered sugar cookie and brighten it up with a variety of colors using a stencil. I have an artist palette and I've put in here some of our powdered food color. Now I need to make a liquid out of that, kind of like a paint. So I'm going to take some, right now I have vodka, but you could use lemon extract or any drinking alcohol, clear. See how I'm mixing that into a little bit of a paste. Now I want to take a paper towel and brush off the excess so I don't have a wet runny brush. Now I go to my cookie, line up my stencil, just as if I were going to paint my walls or note cards. I'm going to paint my cookie. You can also add variety by painting different areas of the stencil different colors. I have yellow now on my brush, and I only did the back part of the wings, the upper part of the stencil. there in my blue. Now I'm going to take my yellow and paint right up to it, making sure I go over those openings just a tad because you want the colors to blend together. And to continue finishing out the butterfly. Lift it off. And there you go. See how fast that was? Now if you have a lot of cookies that you need to decorate, I would recommend this because you do not have to keep washing your stencil in between. If you do get it built up with color, just wipe it off with a paper towel and keep going. The type of stencil that you need for creating three-dimensional pieces is one such as this, where you have large openings. We call this a production piece. You're going to be creating a whole bunch of butterfly wings at one time that you can then store in an airtight container once they're dry. For butterfly wings, I'm going to lay the stencil down on a piece of parchment. Then I'm going to take colored royal icing and spread it thickly across the stencil openings. Now I want to keep this nice and thick so that I have a nice, thick and durable butterfly wing. Otherwise, it'll tend to break on me when I try and peel it off after it's dried. Now I'm going to put one finger on my parchment, with the other hand lift up the stencil. The edges of the wings are puckered when you first pull the stencil off. But just give it a little shake. And they'll gently flow down to nice rounded edges. Now we're going to let this dry, and then we'll be able to take them off and form our three-dimensional butterflies. We have a bunch of butterfly wings now. And what's nice is you can store these in an airtight container until you're ready to use them. I'm going to show you how to assemble the butterfly. I like to take a piece of parchment and fold it like this. I'm going to pipe the body. Then I'm going to take one wing, stick it in here, and the other wing on the other side. Now we're going to let that dry, and after we'll be able to pop the whole thing off and have a three-dimensional butterfly. Now our butterfly is dry. I can pick them off, and there we go. Here's the template for our swans. See how we have mirror images of the swan body and the wings. We're going to be creating this so that you can do an individual swan. You can also put the swan with just one wing wrapping around the side of your cake. Take your stencil and line it up with a piece of parchment paper. We are then going to take our royal icing, and this time we're going to use quite a lot of it. You want to build up these pieces so they aren't so fragile and break on you. Spread it across all the openings. and then even it out. At this point, carefully pull up one end and hold down the parchment with the other hand and pull off the stencil. Now if you take a close look, the edges of the swan are quite puckered. At this point, to get rid of the puckering, just take your parchment and give it a quick shake. If you need to, you can always take it and run it off the edge of your working surface. Now the edges have flowed down, they're nice and rounded, and we're going to let this dry and then we'll assemble it. If you'd like to have some curvature to the wings, we put those on the outside of the stencil so that you can put something underneath it while it is drying, right here on the ends, and your wings will dry with some curvature. Now I'm going to show you how to construct the swan. I'm going to take one side, flip it over, we're going to take our icing bag and ice an amount like this. And lightly press them together. At this point, you can take your icing bag and fill in any openings right around here. And then clean it up with your finger. Like that. Now we need to get this to stand. So we're going to put a dollop down here on our parchment paper. Like so. Take one of our wings, some more there, fix it to the side, and then take our other wing and do the same. Now we can go back and make it look like little waves down here at the bottom. I'm going to let that dry. Once that dries, then you have a three-dimensional piece to stick on top of your cake. Well, that wraps it up for my demonstration today. Thank you for joining me. I hope I've been able to enlighten you on the different uses of stencils and that you're not so scared now, that you can go and try. Practice on parchment paper first. Just remember that. Practice, practice, and after a few times, you're going to be a pro. It's just that easy. Please visit us at designerstencils.com to find more how-to videos and instructions on how to take your stenciling to a higher level.